The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Thomas Senherho. Hi, Thomas.
Hey, Dom. How's it going?
Very well, thank you. And Jack Barazzini. Hi, Jack.
How's it going?
Very well. So this is great. We have some great topics tonight. We're going to be talking about cybersecurity, and especially around passwords and church passwords for people who work in ministry, and that's where our, from a Catholic point of view, sort of a mandate comes in with this show. We're also going to be talking about the Google I/O announcements from last week, where Google had its big reveal of its new features and plans for over the next year and that sort of thing. And then we're going to be talking also about SpaceX's StarLink satellite system, which is launching as we record this Wednesday night. You'll be receiving this hopefully Thursday or Friday morning, Thursday night or Friday morning. So launching tonight, the Starlink satellite network, and we'll tell you as much as we know about that in a bit. So let's get started with our first segment, where we'll talk about cybersecurity and passwords. Now, there was this article in my local diocesan newspaper that I saw from Catholic News Service about hackers, email hackers, and hacker is a term that's often used of a wide variety of people of various skill levels and abilities, and what they're actually doing may or may not be actual technical skill, shall we say. But some folks used email apparently to get into the financial accounts of a parish in the Diocese of Cleveland and stole $1.75 million, money that was supposed to be paid to a construction company working on church renovations, but were instead diverted to another place by changing the bank and wiring instructions. Instead of the bank an account for the construction company, it went to a fraudulent bank account where the money was then swept out of there to someplace else, and this is how the bad guys hide these things. It's a terrible thing, but it made me think about how poorly most people, but especially in my experience, most church organizations are about cybersecurity. So I thought we could talk a little bit about that. Thomas, you have some experience working in parish ministry. I'm not going to ask you to reveal anything about your particular parish, but from your point of view, what's the weak point here for most? What is one thing most parishes can do to fix some of this, to increase their cybersecurity?
It's people, man. It's always people. It's the weakest link is always a human on the end that trusts, and that's really, I hate to say it, but it always verify. If I can promise you, the kind of email scam that this was a phishing email scam. It was probably a spear phishing where they targeted a particular person, and they sent them an email that said, "We need you to renew your password or update your password," and it had a link on it. The person clicked the link and then entered their password for the bank, and then that hacker got that account information. It's not even real hacking. It's just they just tried a whole bunch of different people to send the email to, and that's almost assuredly what happened here. And so really the thing that you have to do is you have to teach people, you have to train people. Anybody who has access to those accounts needs to know just the really very basics, that the bank is never going to ask you to put in your password through an email. They're not going to do it, and they might redirect you to their webpage, but even then you have to look at the webpage and make sure that you know where you're logging in before you put in any secure information.
Always type or click on your own bookmark, but even better, type in the address yourself. Don't rely on any links in email. This is something I am very, very passionate about in my own security. Is don't ever click on links to secure websites that come in your own email, even if you're absolutely certain it's from them. Don't do it. Just don't.
I've seen some where we get this a lot because we use Office 365 where I work, and I've seen some where they'll replace the O's in Microsoft with Cyrillic O's, so it looks the same to when you're looking at it, but the Unicode character is different, so it's technically a different website. So they get really sneaky about it.
And a lot of times in the church, especially in these nonprofit organizations, you have a lot of people who are older. They're not as computer savvy, and they aren't trained to be aware of this. And in fact, if I could ask dioceses to do one thing, it's to set up training for all of your employees, your diocesan employees, your parish employees, your school employees, on cybersecurity, so you can avoid phishing, ransomware, all that stuff.
But get a good person to provide the training that's not going to throw stuff at these people that's over their head. Because I think that's the big problem is as soon as you go in with something over their head, they just shut down. And you have so many people that are, I hate saying tech illiterate, but they're at that border point where they know enough to be able to be on, to be involved, but as soon as you start throwing a few more high-tech terms at them, they're out. And this is one of those things that you don't need high-tech terms. You just need to say, you don't even use the term phishing. Just what we're saying here is you're going to get an email that has fake information in it, or that's going to try and send you to a different place. And all you need to tell them is do not click links in emails, period.
Right.
And that's really the end of it. And as soon as you can drill that into people's heads, you've done enough to save yourself a lot of headache.
I've noticed, even though it's not even just with tech illiterate people, because I've worked with a lot of computer programmers who they're fantastic at what they do and they know how to use computers, but they just don't think about the security aspect.
That's true too. Yeah, no, that is definitely true.
I have to say, I'm anonymizing this because I don't want to expose anybody, but I have known people who are programmers, high level degrees in programming and engineering, who are at a high level within a major organization, who use the worst passwords.
Oh gosh. Oh yeah.
There was a time when you had to get a password from this person for a particular thing, and the password was, I'm like, you're kidding, right? That this is the password that if someone got this, they could wreak havoc in this organization. It's
like in Spaceballs with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. Yes, right.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of times, sometimes it's a detriment to have that much training too, because you trust the system. You trust that your password's going to be hashed, it's going to be protected. There are many layers protecting, but you don't realize that the hacker's not going to try and hack your password on the server. They're going to try and get it from you, because that's the easiest way for them to get it.
Right. Yeah. And these days, they know that most people are trying to use better passwords. We have these systems that make you enter a new password every 90 days, which it's insane making when you are someone who uses good passwords. But now they're switching to it's easier to hack people than it is to hack computer systems.
Mm-hmm. They've actually shown that making the password constraints as complex as they are is actually becoming detrimental, because everyone's just writing their passwords down. And I've known people who they'll keep all their passwords for everything that's secure in a text document on their desktop labeled passwords. So if you get in their computer, you know right where to go.
Yep.
I worked for an organization not long ago that kept all of its passwords in a Word doc on a Windows shared drive.
Oh, man.
The server was on the Wi-Fi network that didn't have a password.
Oh, you can't see our faces, guys, but you got all three of us right now are just, rubbing our foreheads.
So one of the first things I did as soon as I was able to was replace that with OnePassword for Teams, which is what my preferred password vault system. There are others, LastPass, Dashlane. There's lots of good ones out there. But I always recommend people is you want to have unique passwords for each website. And if you're going to have a team of people working on things and need access to things, having something like a password vault for Teams allows you to share passwords securely. You're not writing them down in a text document. You're not, and then the only password you have to remember is the one password that unlocks the vault. And then you don't write that down. It makes it something that only you know, and that doesn't get written down. I mean, again, it doesn't protect you against social hacking, which is someone conning you into giving up the information. Right. But it's at least one door that's closed.
This story here definitely sounds like it was a social engineering thing or a phishing scam more than a technical issue.
Right.
Right. Oh yeah, and I think that's what the average user needs to be worried about, because really the systems themselves have gotten so advanced that the only people that are hacking the systems themselves are the nation state actors, like the Russias and Chinas, or the big hacker corporations that are working.
Right.
And they're not going to target for even this amount of money is still kind of a pittance to them for what their main goals are.
Right. That's right. Yeah. They're going after corporations and governments and that sort of thing, or bigger organizations, bigger fish. One of the things that is the problem is just having to remember passwords. Most of us humans, we're not designed in a way or engineered to remember long, complex, random strings, which is what a good password is. And so one of the things they're trying to develop are ways to avoid that. Things like thumbprint on your phone or Face ID. So these different biometrics, those are called biometric security. One is, and I saw this recently, the World Wide Web Consortium approved this new web authentication standard that's supposed to replace passwords. And in fact, it's already supported in most of the major browsers, Chrome, Firefox, Edge, and Safari. And it's still a standard. It's not a product yet. But one of the things it does is it'll let websites communicate with a security device that you've got connected somehow.
In the government world, that's pretty much how everything already operates at this point. You got your PKI card, and it's got your cert on it. You can't log into any systems if you're working with the government unless you got your card with you and your PIN and your password. So it looks like it's pretty much just a commercial version of that. Right.
It like YubiKey, which is the consumer version.
Right.
But I think this one is, or this standard is a way of, so that's more of a site has to support YubiKey individually, and this is a way of creating a standard that many manufacturers and many sites, which is what will make this sort of much more usable.
Yeah, it's sort of the HTML version of that security password system. So it's a standardized, here's how the language is going to work. Here's how all the protocols are going to pass. Here's the hashing algorithms we're going to use. It's a really good system too, and it should be light enough. What they're talking about is that it should be light enough to support like just a USB key, so you don't have to have any kind of dedicated security system. Although you could if you wanted to.
Right. Of course, you have problems with people leaving their YubiKeys around, their security keys and that sort of thing. So usually these are multi-factor security, so you need a password and the physical key, and sometimes even a third authentication, maybe your facial recognition or something. That would be really secure.
Yeah.
But we're not quite there yet. Is at the consumer or even business level, the general business level, I think.
Well, in a big way, though, kind of cycling back to where we started on this, two-factor authentication is a big deal, and anybody who has a big access password should have some kind of access to a two-factor authentication system where it's going to ping somebody's phone and they have to okay that transaction or that procedure going through.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Most big websites, whether it's Facebook or Google or Dropbox or any of these services, now offer two-factor authentication. And one of the ways to do that is something called Google Authenticator. Is an app you can put on your phone. There are other versions of that. Authy also does it. It's another app that allows you to back up your second factor. There's also OnePassword has it built in. But what it does is there's your password, but then there's a second password that is time-based. So, and it's synchronized on the net so that every 30 seconds it changes. So, even if someone has your username and password, if they don't have access to your second factor, which is this time-based password, that makes it that much harder. And usually they have to have a device like your phone in order to have that second factor. So if wherever, we should probably see if I can drum up a link to information about two-factor authentication, but wherever you have that available, you should be using it. Two-factor is tough because where you have, there's a lot of times, especially like in church, it's different organizations, multiple people need to have access to the same thing, and some sites only give you one user account, like banking sites. That's partly this is on banks, frankly, this problem. And they don't. So I don't know many banks that actually do two-factor authentication, which they should. Or at least Bank of America doesn't. I know that. But even then, if I have the two-factor and my wife doesn't, then it's not as secure as it could be. So they're still got to work on some of that, and there's ways around it. But it would be nice to have some functionality.
They need to make it easier for people to use, because I know so many people who, it doesn't matter how insecure it is, they're just not going to set that up because they don't feel like grabbing their phone when they're logging into anything.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And I know I resisted the 2FA stuff for a long time. And I really didn't like the fact that I had to have my phone around me all the time to be able to log into stuff. But then once I started reading some papers about the increased level of security, and then I'll tell you that it was what really happened was that the one time it stopped somebody from getting into my account from Russia, who, had gotten my password from one of these other hacks that came out. And they were just trying stuff out, and it was a password that I had cycled through every once in a while. And it popped up on my phone because of the two-factor authentication. I was like, okay, I'm sold. That's it. I am in.
Right, exactly.
I will keep that.
All it takes is one near miss, and
there you go.
Yeah. I try to use it everywhere I can. And again, it doesn't protect you against all bad actors. I used two factors. I used long, complex passwords, and I still had my bank account emptied by somebody through a Venmo hack. Still not quite sure where they got my information from. So someone had my account information and was able to drain it into a Venmo account and then swept it from there. And the bank, covered me eventually, and I was made whole, but it was scary, and I still don't know. I think the ultimate in insecurity is, I think someone grabbed the credit card numbers off of my card when I was out, maybe at a restaurant or something, which is, you think about it, we hand our credit card to waiters who walk away with it, and who knows.
That always bothers me. Oh my gosh, that always bothers me. It's like, where are you going with that thing? I don't want you to do that right here.
Right. Well,
bring up the square.
Yeah, in a lot of in Europe especially, they carry card readers to the table, and they do it right there in front of you. I use Apple Pay everywhere I can, as much as I can, because that generates a unique credit card number essentially for every transaction. So even if someone slurps that one, it can't be used ever again. Right. And so I'm very, very paranoid about it. One thing that could go ahead.
I just use the barter system. So
yeah, exactly.
Here's a chicken for my dinner.
It is my dinner.
Yes, that's right.
Please go cook this for me.
Yes, and you can have whatever's left. So one of the things that got announced is Google has a new Chrome extension called Password Checkup that will automatically check your passwords against some of these big databases. And I know, Jack, that I think that's going to be partially part of your pick today for our pick of the week. So I won't get too much into that. But other systems, that OnePassword has they call it Watchtower, where it will also do the same thing, where it will check your passwords and check them for age, check them for if you're using duplicates, check it for, is it showing up in one of these breaches where through no fault of your own, somebody has breached it, it's gotten a hold of a password and that sort of thing. So that all of these things are helpful, but again, comes back to, if someone willingly gives up their password, all this does no good. So let people know, and especially educate your less tech savvy, non-tech podcast listening family. That's
right.
It does no good if say, you listen to the podcast and you're very secure, but your husband or wife doesn't, and they're not.
And then phishing schemes, man. As soon as they get access to that person's email, even if they can't get through their stuff, to. They can send an email from that person's account that looks very credible.
Yep.
And these guys, I mean, the hackers aren't working on like trying to figure out how to hack the next big thing. The computers are not fast enough to do that. The best thing they can invest their time in is that social engineering portion.
Right. And educate your kids, by the way.
Yep.
Teach your kids about good
definitely.
security. They need it. They will need it even more in the future. All right. I think we've dealt with that topic, and I'm sure we'll be coming back to it in the future. So let's talk about Google I/O announcements. So from the scary of hacking our passwords to some fun announcements. So we said last week, I think we said that this is the time of year when all the big tech companies do their big reveals of their new features, new products, the things that are coming. We had Facebook do its F8, and now Apple will be next month, and Microsoft had its Build conference. But now this was Google last week, and they had some highlights of some things. What do you think? Was it just groundbreaking? Was there big features, or was it kind of a incremental update?
It was iterative.
It's showing their move in the right direction. And this will come up when I'm talking about my pick of the week this week is because I think that Google is starting to hear that people are not comfortable with how big they've gotten.
Yeah.
And so some of these things are a nod in that direction, saying, okay, we get it. You guys are not comfortable with the level of access we have to your information. So we want to give you more control over that. And we want to kind of let that privacy thing be more your domain.
Yes, privacy. I think a lot of Facebook was talking a lot about privacy. Google's talking about privacy. Apple has been made privacy its brand basically for the past couple of years. So I think they're all hearing it, that people are tired of worrying about their information, their private information being used against them in various ways. I'm not sure whether we talked about this last week, whether Facebook is really serious about your privacy or not. But Google seems to be moving in the right direction. Well, one of the other things it seems that they're listening to as well is people think that their phones are too expensive. So let's start with the new phones, the Pixel 3a. This is a phone that starts at $400, which is for a flagship quality phone like Google's Pixel. You know, phones have been getting more expensive, $1,000, $1,200 for some. You know, the Samsung, the iPhone. This is a shot across the bow, saying we can release a decent phone. No, it doesn't have all the features, all the high.
It has a headphone jack.
Right. It doesn't have wireless charging. It has a slightly less good, but still very good camera. Like it doesn't have the super wide angle, but it has a slightly less wide angle. But it still has night sight, the nighttime shooting mode, and super res, and all these things like that. But it's a pretty good phone for $400.
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
No, I'm going to be honest though. I've never used an Android phone that has had a decent camera, and I don't know if that's the software or the hardware, but I don't like Apple. But the one thing I think they do better is their phones.
The cameras on the phones?
Yeah, the cameras, and just honestly, the usability.
Yeah.
The usability too. Yeah, I've had this complaint for the longest time. I buy phones unlocked. I'm just that guy. I don't like to get the phone attached to the account. You know, I buy it unlocked. Now, I will say the Pixel just hit my radar because that's my price point. That $400 range is where I go for phones, and this thing has the specs that I want. My problem is I've been burned in the past on specs a lot. The Samsung phones they're junk in my opinion. They have paper specs are great, right? But you try and put that thing up against an iPhone and it cannot compete. It just cannot move around as fast. The cameras aren't as good. And that bothers me. It bothers me that the specs are great, but the phone does not perform well. And so that's
been my experience too.
Yeah. And so that's an issue.
So the photos, so I've heard complaints because I'm an iPhone guy, so I don't use the Androids, but I've heard complaints that the phone app, the camera app on the Android phones often are slow to respond.
Very slow.
You'll press the button and there's a noticeable delay before it'll snap the picture. Or that the app just crashes.
We've gotten to the point now with my wife has an older iPhone. It's probably 4 years old now, and I have an Android phone from last year. And whenever we try to take pictures, she's gotten to the point where if I get my phone out, she's like, "No, we're not using that one. I want actual good pictures."
That's amazing. See, because I mean, I understand the attraction of some of the Android stuff. I really do. But I have never had a problem taking a photo with my iPhone. I mean, it's always been. It's like working with an old film camera where it's mechanical. You press the button, the shutter opens, the picture's taken, and it's a really good picture.
Not the same on Android at all. Never have I had that experience on Android.
Interesting.
And I don't think it's tied to hardware, honestly. Because every Android phone does it.
Yeah, it's a software issue. It's absolutely a software issue, and there's no. I haven't found a piece of software that solves the problem.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. Okay, so now if people are wedded to Android though, and they want, I mean, this sounds like a pretty decent deal. Then if you want to, maybe you get this and a 2-year-old iPhone.
There you go. That's your camera. Just carry around a camera with you guys. Carry around a digital camera.
We're back to carrying around a separate camera. So then there's some other stuff that that they announced that Nest, Google owns the Nest, which was, remember, the Nest thermostat. Then they had Nest Protect smoke detectors, and they've kind of expanded Nest cameras. And so they've kind of combined Nest and their home line into one thing. And so they've rebranded everything as Google Nest, which is interesting. They have this new Nest Home Hub. Do either of you have Google Home?
No.
Okay. No, so, I'm working towards some open source options for it, but
yeah, I've set up everything on Linux, just buying my own IP cameras because
there
you go.
I don't trust the back doors.
Yep.
This is my my panel for this show of the Linux. I'm very deep into the guts of things. I don't trust anybody.
Yes, that sounds like where we're going here.
That's awesome. So there's been some iterative stuff on Android Q, the next operating system for Android. It sounds like this digital well-being stuff, like we talked about, they're responding to people's concerns. It sounds a lot like Apple's, and I'm sorry, we've got to compare Apple and Google because that's my frame of reference. It sounds a lot like Apple's screen time stuff, where it not only does it allow you to control or to be more aware of your use of your phone, but also lets parents be a little more granular in overseeing and also limiting how their kids use their phones, which, what do you think of that?
I love this thing. I got Family Link on my phone. We bought Nooks for all of my kids because the price came down so far. They're all on the Android Go system.
Yep.
And I can only have 5, but I've already put in a complaint about, I've got 7 kids. I need some more access.
Yes.
And they were really
big
responsive
families.
to it. Exactly. Yeah, they were really responsive to it. They were like, "Oh yeah, you have reached the limit here. I can see where you would want more than that." So I'm waiting to hear back from them about the solution for that. But
good.
It's fantastic because it doesn't lock the system down except where I want it to. So I have my kids set up on a 3-hour timer a day. So they only get 3 hours a day during the week of play. And it warns them when that time's coming up. So they are getting better about managing their own time use. It goes into the App Store and they can request apps and it sends me a request notification. And then I can approve the app. So I can look at the app and see what the comments are about it. And then I can approve or deny the app based on what I feel about whether or not they need it for their system.
Can I ask you, did you set them up, the kids under 12? Did you set them up as being under 12?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay,
and it was, I created a Google account for them.
Yeah.
And you put in their birth date and it doesn't even give you the option to say how old they are. It just reads off of their birth date,
right,
what they're doing. And then it sets up a specific Google under 12 account for them. So that it locks a whole bunch of options out. They can't use their email for certain things. They can't, there's a YouTube Kids app that I can put on. And then there's even inside of the YouTube Kids app, it's split up into under 12 and over 12. So, my kids who are really, I know that they're responsible enough to view decent things on YouTube. I set them up with the over 12 option and then the rest of them I set with the younger. I love this. I am really, the most annoying feature about it is that it pings me like 300,000 times with all of their app requests. But we're getting better about that, and I'm getting to the point. They're starting to understand what an educational app is versus just an I want to play this app.
Right. Yeah. So I picked Google Family Links, the software that they use, this whole system, a few episodes ago, because I got a Chromebook for my daughter who was 12. She's just about to turn 13, like this coming week. And Google has been warning me, when she turns 13, this is what's going to change about what she can do with it, which is good. I'm glad that they're very granular about that. But I actually was chafing at the restrictions, and I think they could have done a better job at explaining to me, especially as an Apple user, how exactly I could have set things up so that you were able to, because I couldn't figure out how I could set it up so that she could download or request apps from the Play Store. I just kept running into a roadblock. I wanted to set her up with OnePassword and all this other stuff to make it easier for her, to educate her about this stuff. So now that she's turning 13, that's not going to be a problem, and it'll be a lot easier to do that. But otherwise, it really is great to have this sort of understanding that parents need to be able to not just control their kids' time, but to watch it, to help them develop good habits, and to help us develop good habits. One of the things that they have with this is a focus mode that lets you, as the user, say, I don't want, these are apps I want to avoid during particular periods of time. Just these apps, which we know, Facebook, Instagram, Candy Crush, these are the apps I shouldn't be allowed to use during work, or during dinner time, or whatever it is that it's your problem. So it's good to see that these different companies are figuring this out and helping us. It's really a good idea. One of the interesting things is that under an accessibility thing, they're going to start, and this is one of those things that really only Google can do because of how much data they're slurping up from their users, is live subtitles on all videos. Like, no matter if you're on Facebook or YouTube or some random website, or someone sends you a video, they can give you live captioning. And it's intended for people with hearing issues, but anybody can use it, can turn it on. Who knows how good it'll be, but
yeah, I wonder if it's going to be as hilarious as the YouTube auto closed captions are, because those are hilarious.
That's intense. To be fair though, a lot of this stuff is getting a lot better. The audio analysis is getting a lot better. But yeah, still, sound quality is such a huge factor in what a computer can use to hear, and to try and turn it into something legible.
Right.
One of the other projects, one of the things is Project Mainline, they call it, which is an unfortunate name, but it has bad connotations in some ways. But what it does is it allows users to get around the limitations that both carriers and phone manufacturers have placed on Android users in getting updates to Android. Some like Verizon, I think, has been particularly bad at this, and I think Samsung might be too, if I'm correct, in that preventing users from getting the latest version of Android onto their phone. They have to wait until there's a carrier approved or manufacturer approved version. They can wait weeks or months after it's been released before they can get it. This is going to be a way to offer a system of updates in modules, which is interesting, that will say update specific things, like can update the camera software because there are bugs in it. And that way you can get your bug updates and fixes right away without having to wait for your carrier to approve the big feature updates.
So it basically sounds like the Windows model, the way Windows releases patches for different errors, but it doesn't touch the apps. I think it sounds good, but I honestly don't know how effective it's going to be, because they've been trying to push this for years, where all the Android phones all get updates, and it never worked.
Interesting. Yeah.
And it's more difficult with these operating systems because they are so tied to the mobile chip that's in them. And with the iPhone, you don't have to worry quite as much about that because it's very limited, the amount of access that that it has.
And there's one chip. It's the same chip in all the phones.
It works this way.
Yeah.
And with the Androids, there's just it's the constant hazard of a Linux user, where you don't really know what you have in the system, so you don't want to make guesses about what you have in the system, and that's the way Android is. Like, you don't really know what's in the system because all the phones are so different.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'm in the same boat, right? I love the idea. I really don't think it's going to work out as simply as they want to try and say it's going to.
Mm. Yeah, sometimes I think they would just prefer everyone just buy a Pixel and be done with it. But
that's what they try to push. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. I mean, it's a lot like Microsoft. We're seeing Microsoft in Windows all over again. That's just the model, and now they are selling Surface and Surface Books because this is buy the one with our name on it because we control the software and the hardware. You're going to have a better experience, or so they say. And that's, I think, what Google is trying to do with this, while, kind of have their cake and eat it too. In that,
I think the problem is phones. What the hardware is matters more with a phone than it does with a computer. Like Windows is more flexible than Android.
Yeah, it's interesting, and you have the added complexity of the carrier as well. Yeah. So you have this third party. With internet providers, it's IP standard. It's pretty much the same no matter who you connect to, but carriers are just unique enough individually, I think, that it matters a little bit. So then one more feature I want to mention, unless there's something else that you saw that you wanted to talk about, which is this Duplex, which they unveiled to great fanfare last year, which would be this AI that will make phone calls for you and book your appointments, and people freaked out last year when this got released because creepy. I'm not going to know if it's an AI calling to make an appointment for someone or a real human being, and I don't like that. There was this uncanny valley factor, I think, that was involved, and Google walked that back a little bit. They didn't talk much about Duplex, except to just say that now it's really going to be more about text and not speaking, and so that'll be interesting to see. What did you think of the Duplex this year?
I like the idea. I like the idea of it being more of this text-based thing, because my doctor's already doing that. My doctor's already got this like system that I can connect to that allows me to just go on the internet and type in look for an appointment time and make an appointment time. And I like the concept that if I were actually keeping a calendar on my phone, that my phone could go ahead and make a decision for me and say, oh well, in the next 6 months you're going to need it around this time period. Boom, there you go. I've booked your appointment for you. And it's just kind of put in there, because that's one of those things that I just don't like doing. I just don't like investing the time.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of people that are in that boat, but it's stuff that I know I need to do, and I'm going to keep pushing it off. And so 6 months is going to turn into 9, it's going to turn into a year. And it would be nice if the computer could do this for me. I would not mind that. I do feel you on the the phone calling for me and making the appointment. That's a little weird, but I don't mind the just my calendar's getting in touch with your calendar and they're hooking it up.
Yeah, that would be nice.
I do wonder if this does get implemented, how many times people are going to get appointments made for them, just forget about them, not show up, and then it's going to really annoy doctors and whoever else. Because I could see that happening easily.
So, yeah, it puts it on your calendar, but unless you have notifications that have it pop up and say, hey, by the way, I've made an appointment for you tomorrow. It's tomorrow, remember? Unless it got that other end of it to bug you about it. Because I have to do that when I make appointments. When I make the appointment, I have to put multiple alerts starting several days out to remind me, by the way, remember, you made this appointment. So I can see how it would be even worse. I mean, what we need is Jarvis. We need, that AI assistant who can, Jarvis is a reference to Iron Man.
On your calendar today, sir.
Yeah, exactly. We need that AI assistant who does that stuff for us. All right. So were there any other things that Google announced that you wanted to mention or talk about? I mean, I think we hit the high points. And there's always more.
I was surprised they didn't talk more about Stadia and they made that announcement recently, and then just it didn't pop up much here. So
that's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, because Stadia is their streaming gaming service where you can play any. They promise, or they claim, that you'll be able to play any high-end video game from any system anywhere over the internet. So you could play a high-end Far Cry or something that requires heavy duty PC hardware. You'll be able to play it on your tablet or your phone, because all of the computation is being done on the cloud. Yeah, that's like interesting. There's a lot of skepticism around Stadia, whether they can actually pull it off. I'll be curious.
I feel like there was one that came out. It was probably close to a decade ago now that was promising the same thing, and it never panned out. And I just don't think the bandwidth was there. But I can imagine with fiber that we could probably get that.
We're getting close to it. Yeah. Like Father Corey, I remember at the time was saying, out here in Malta, Montana, I'd be curious to see whether we can get enough bandwidth for this. But in the big cities, it's probably possible now. So
as long as you can run Doom.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
So
the classics in there.
Yes, exactly. So let's go to our third segment. We're going to talk about StarLink, which is a new satellite network from SpaceX, and this is one of a number of satellite systems being proposed by some companies that promise to have ubiquitous internet from space. So you will basically they're a network, a web of low Earth orbit satellites, small little satellites that your phone or computer or tablet or whatever device in your home will communicate with to get on the internet, as opposed to through a line attached to your house to the pole or to a microwave tower, nearby in your town. So we get rid of all the cell towers and all that sort of stuff. So that's the promise. So SpaceX is launching, as we record this, as I said before, this night, their first group of these satellites. They're 500 pounds each. They look like they're flat panel design. There will be 60 of them in a Falcon 9 rocket. And we'll have a link in the show notes to an article about it from Spaceflight Now, where it shows the configuration inside the payload of this Falcon rocket of these 60 satellites. And to me, it looks like a server rack, and it's going to basically fly through space and eject them out as it goes. So, what do you guys think? Is this somewhere where we're going to be? Are we someday, soon going to have? Is this a pipe dream, or are we going to be getting internet everywhere without wires and all that sort of stuff? What do you think?
I think it's inevitable.
Yeah, because it's just so many companies are doing it. I mean,
so many companies are doing it, and that's really where technology is going, is the Internet of Things, where everything is connected all the time. And I know where I live, I can get 4G, and then I drive a mile down the road and I've got nothing. So there's still a lot of places that are spotty.
Yeah, actually, I live in a suburb close to Boston, and my house, I get very bad connection. If I didn't have my Wi-Fi, and AT&T's got the the call over Wi-Fi, data over Wi-Fi, so I can get calls over the Wi-Fi. If I didn't have that, I would have no phone service here. It would be terrible. So yeah, I agree with you. I mean, from an American point of view, there's still a lot of places where you can't get internet. But I think there's also from an international point of view, there's a lot of places in the world that don't have broadband.
Right.
More don't than do, I think. And that's where the growth markets are for these companies.
Yeah, and I think that it's it's a fantastic idea. It's really progressive the way that they're thinking about it, and I love that they're tying it to their space program, and they're kind of tying the success of their space program to it as well, because that's one of the method of monetizing it is going to be really interesting for them. That's kind of what their plan is to try to support SpaceX going forward with this model of, well, we're getting stuff out there that's providing you with the internet,
Yeah, and I think he said that they want to use the revenues from this to help them develop the Mars plans that Elon Musk has, which is very interesting.
Yeah, that's the end game of it, is to try and to push it forward. And you talk about you look at all this stuff that SpaceX is doing, and they've got a great marketing team. They really know how to talk themselves up. This is an area where that marketing team is really going to shine. Hey, look what we've been able to do. We've been able to bring the internet to rural Canada, and it's there just as fast as it is in New York. There are very few breaks in it. It works, and we're doing more of it. We're bringing more of that. So join our network, get involved, and then you got a monthly fee for these people that this stuff is out there. It's just going to sit there, work. You don't have to do anything to it. You just have to get it up there once. And then people are going to keep paying for it, because the maintenance costs are practically negligible.
Right.
So it's a fantastic idea on their part.
And going forward, they're going to need internet on Mars, so this is a good proof of concept for that.
Right.
That's true. That's true. I mean, and that's the thing. You think of all the infrastructure that this circumvents, all those towers, all those wires, all those telephone poles everywhere, and then the Wi-Fi, and routers in your home. I mean, if this, I'm not sure how this KU band radio works. It's a little outside my expertise, but it can pull high-speed data from 100 miles up to small devices, and so you don't have to have you set up a network in your home and everything's just directly connected. That would be a very interesting concept. There are other issues with that, obviously, like the number of IP addresses and that sort of thing, which we don't have to get into. But it's a complicated thing we can talk about another time, maybe. But I like the idea. Yeah, IPv6. Yeah,
IPv6. There you go. That's exactly what I was thinking. We're fixing it.
We are fixing it. But the idea that we'll have this, internet everywhere, no matter where you go, it's been something I've been thinking about for a long time. I remember on my honeymoon with my wife, we were driving through Nova Scotia in 2006. We honeymooned in Nova Scotia in Prince Edward Island, and in the middle of Nova Scotia, there is nothing. There is nothing, including no phone service. And we had this long conversation about it very soon. And I mean, again, 2006 is pre-smartphone. I was talking about how you'd be able to get on the internet anywhere you went, and we're getting there. We're very close to it. I mean, this is pretty amazing how this is going to, and it'll be great for people who are in developing countries.
Yeah. Well, and I think even with this, like if you took this, not just that my phone's going to directly connect to one of these things, but if I had to have a device that sat in my house like a modem or router, or that was portable, more likely and more reasonably, that I could stick in my car and drive with me and then stick on my desk at work. And I could always have my internet connection through this device. I would be okay carrying around something like that. I would be okay with that being an additional part of the equipment that I have on a daily basis.
Right.
To carry my home network with me wherever I went. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time and effort trying to have access to all of my data that sits on a NAS and on a desktop computer and all that sort of stuff with me, or it's in Dropbox, it's in whatever all the time. Whereas if I like to carry my phone or my iPad or my my laptop or whatever, but that idea of that I can just carry my presence online with me, it's a fascinating idea. I like that concept, especially as we're getting closer to foldable devices that can be portable and yet expand into something. We talked about that recently. I'm sure we'll be talking about foldable devices again sometime soon. But
I just have to mention the elephant in the room, though. StarLink is very close to Skynet. That's the only thing I'm going to throw out about that.
Yes, if the satellites go up and get turned on tonight and everything goes off, and nobody will hear this podcast if that happens. But we're running for the hills.
Yep. We know it's coming.
That's right. All right, so that brings us to our picks of the week, and this is every week we pick something that's interesting to us. We want to share. So, Thomas, why don't you go first? What's your pick of the week?
All right, so talking about all this security stuff and kind of all of this, the concept of privacy and all of these things, I have started using DuckDuckGo as my dedicated internet search engine. And I definitely recommend that people do it. If you've ever been concerned about the fact that the data that you search for, even just the things that you search, follows you around on the internet, this is a great way to avoid that, because DuckDuckGo has committed themselves to not storing any of your data that you are searching for. And you might not be aware that Google does this or that Bing does this, but they do store the data that you search for, and it is in some way attached to you through either cookies or through an IP indexer or something of the sort. And it connects those searches back to you so that Google can sell that to ad companies and to sell you ads. So DuckDuckGo has committed to a completely anonymous search system where if you go on their browser and use their browser, your search is 100% anonymous. It's done that time, and that data is not stored past that one time. They do still do ads. They still have ads on there, but the ads are related to the search itself, not to you as a searcher. So not to your IP address or to anything that you've searched for historically, but just this one search, some ads will pop up from that one search. And they're assuming that if you are searching for something, that you might want an ad to come back about that thing, and that's how they're going to make their money anyway. They have to do something.
Right, right.
So
that's excellent.
And I like that model because I think it's starting to recognize the fact that I don't have an expectation that every single thing I do online is sold to someone. And it's not something that the typical consumer is aware of, but that is normally the case. And you really have to think about it. If the thing that you're using is free, you are the commodity that's being bought and sold. And who is the most honest about it is kind of the question you have to look for here.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can make DuckDuckGo your default search engine on pretty much every system out there. Even on Apple, you can do it on your iPhone, and your tablet, your iPad, your Mac, your Windows, Chrome, Safari, everything. You can all of these places. They may not make it easy to find out that you can do it, but you can do it. And I'll see if I can find a link to how to do it to make DuckDuckGo your default browser. That would be useful, I think, for people.
That'd be great. Yeah, the link I included in the show notes was about it's the privacy statement that they made recently about what they do with your data and why they've made the decisions they've made.
Awesome.
The one thing I will say is you're going to lose a lot of functionality. So if you're coming from, if you're used to using Google or if you're used to using Bing, there are a lot of built-ins that Google has or that Bing has that you're going to miss. But in my opinion, it's worth it to go to this other system where they're not tracking me constantly on all the things that I'm searching.
All right. And Jack, what is your pick of the week?
Mine also ties into what we were talking about security. It's haveibeenpwned.com. And basically what it is a website that collates all those databases of those major leaks that we have. I think there were a few earlier this year and a lot of big ones in 2018. What you can do is you can go and put in your email address, and it will search through and see if your email address is in any of these breaches. And you can also put in passwords, like any password you use or just any password you want to use. You can put it in there and search through, and it will see if it's been in those databases.
Excellent. Yeah, and you can also put in your email and get notified when your email address shows up, which is good. And one of the great things is it integrates with, as I was mentioned before, OnePassword. It's built into OnePassword. It checks it and will tell you in there if one of your passwords is in one of these databases. So that's awesome. Yeah, they said, I'm looking at the site, 7.8 billion accounts have been pwned. Pwned is a hacker speak for owned. Don't ask me why. It just is. It would take too long to explain. But that's a good one. Yes, excellent. And these people are doing yeoman service. They do it out of donations. People donate money. It doesn't cost you anything to do it, which is fantastic.
It's always worth checking out.
Yes. And then my pick is a new feature for the device that really strips your privacy. It is your Amazon Echo device, which is it's called. Hold on, just a second. I have to turn off my device so it doesn't respond every time I mention its name. So just a sec. Okay, now we have some privacy. I've turned off the microphone. Yes, it's still listening. Well, it won't respond. It won't make lots of noise as I talk about it. But Alexa Guard is a new service that they have where because it is always listening, as you say, it can listen for certain sounds. You put it in an away mode. You say, as you're walking out the door, Alexa, I'm leaving. And it goes into a guard mode. And you have to turn this on. It's not on all the time. And it will listen for certain sounds, the sounds of smoke alarms, carbon monoxide alarms, or glass breaking. And then it will alert you on your phone because you're away, allow you to drop into your Echo remotely. So even if it's an audio Echo, you can listen or talk. If it's an Echo show, you can see what's going on. It'll work with your lighting, your smart lighting, if you have like smart lights that you've integrated with it, turn them on or off to make it look like you're home. And if you have certain alarm systems, including the Ring alarm, which is now owned by Amazon, or ADT security system, it can help, you can receive smart alerts through that. It works with that. I don't have an alarm system like that, so don't break into my home, please. But just now that I've told you that, but I don't have one of those alarm systems. So it's an interesting, if you have Echoes, it's an interesting idea that maybe you want to check out. It's free. It's part of the system. You can turn it on if you want. It does let you know that it's always listening for certain things. That whether it's the people can be somewhat concerned about what information are they saving, and I'm not really worried about that. I'm not conducting any illegal business in my home and that sort of thing. At this point, I'm not really worried about that it's listening for its wake word. But I think it's an interesting product in the sense of it's smart about looking for problems. It's not just, has the perimeter been breached, like most security alarms, but security systems work. Like, this is more, I'm aware of interesting incidents in this environment. And that's a fascinating idea to me, of using some smarts for that.
Yeah, I just on the illegal business thing, and talking about Alexas and always on devices. There are some interesting implications around this stuff. Teachers are bringing these things into their classrooms, and there are some very serious issues there because there are some things that are being discussed. If you have a parent conference and you're sitting down and you're talking about students, and the Alexa is on listening, that can be an issue. That can be
right.
That can be an issue. So I just wanted to throw out the the privacy issues there that are shining, or medical medical concerns as well. If you're a doctor talking about things in your home with another doctor, and it might be completely above the board what you're doing, but that recording device is there unintentionally. So.
And there was a recent revelation that a quality assurance team at Amazon was listening to, so they would listen to it, supposedly anonymized clips of sounds to make sure, supposed to be able to make sure that the echoes are understanding you correctly and giving you the right response. And so they were supposed to be analyzing that. Well, it turns out they were listening to it, trading interesting ones, and then questions about hearing things like people being hurt or in some kind of distress, and what are we supposed to do with this information? And they're being told, don't do anything. So certain questions have come up. I think we talked about this on a recent episode. If not, we should maybe in the future. But so there are a lot of interesting questions about the fact of we have devices that are always on and listening for something in our homes. There was a recent revelation about a Nest product, a Nest alarm product that had a camera in. I think it was a camera in it.
I know that
was not active. Yeah, what were you gonna say?
That recently happened with Ring, actually.
Ring, okay.
They were not encrypting the video feeds, and so this Ukrainian group, just basically to show the company what was going on, not for anything nefarious, was able to hack into people's Rings without any issue.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I don't have those kind of cameras in the home. I have them outside facing outward, but I have the little slider on my webcams and all that sort of thing in the house. Yeah. So yeah, it's just something to be aware of, and everyone needs to make decisions based on what they're comfortable with and that sort of thing. And we'll continue to talk about this. That's one of the reasons why we do this podcast, because we want to discuss these issues. People can make informed decisions. All right, so I think that's we're going to wrap it up for us, and I just want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Technology, including this week Wojciech D, Rebecca S, Gabe S, James S, and Kathy S. Lots of S's. It's only a coincidence. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Technology and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them in helping us continue our mission by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What did you think of our discussion of cybersecurity and passwords, about the Google I/O announcements, about StarLink, and our picks of the week? Let us know by visiting sqpn.com/technology or the SQPN Facebook page, which is at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, and leave us some feedback there, or send us an email to secretsoftechnology@sqpn.com. And we'd always love to hear if you have interesting topics you want us to discuss, headlines or links to news stories or anything like that. Please send those along too. You can find the links from our discussion on our show notes at sqpn.com. And remember to like the episodes of Secrets of Technology on social media, on our Facebook page, or on Twitter at sqpn. Leave us comments. All those things help create a community that discusses these things and helps spread the information that we're trying to provide and create a community of listeners. We really do appreciate that. Until next time, Thomas and Herho, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of technology.
Thank you very much for having me.
Jack Barazzini, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.